is facing with the coronavirus. I think it's important to just start that it would, I don't think it is in our best interest to have an extended meeting today. It is on that we had invited the Minister of National Security to come, and I'm going to suggest to this committee that we have with us in the ministry the Firearm Licensing Authority, the Department of Corrections, the Parole Board, the Institute of Forensic and Legal Medicine. There's also a number of questions that were asked by the members. I'm going to suggest that without further ado, that once we invite them in the ministry, we would indicate that we are not going to take those departments and agencies. We release them. We would have a short discussion with the permanent secretary and her legal officers, and just the 3 or 4 questions that are here, so that we can clear our pending work. And my suggestion, members, is that it would be prudent for us, having adjourned the meeting early, to not schedule another meeting of the PAAC until such time as we are comfortable that all is clear. So that would be my suggestion. I put it to members for our discussion even before we start. Well, I would want to elaborate alone, but my point is this, that we are in uncertain times, and to schedule meetings and bring everybody out to these meetings now, we need to understand more clearly where we're at. And today we have a meeting at the PAC. I've noticed we have a list of members of Parliament who have tendered their apologies. Mr. Clark, Ms. Filbert, Dalrymple Filbert, Mr. Campbell, Terry Long, Paul Well, Vaz, Stewart, Phillips, Dunn. It is, I think, members have other issues dealing with, but I still believe that, you know, until we're comfortable as to what the situation is, that we not go through. So, in other words, once we are certain that all is well, we can simply put out an advisory and move on to the next meeting.
One little rider I would propose with that is that in convening the next meeting and the agenda, we agree to a mechanism that doesn't require us having a meeting to decide on the other things that come forward. In other words, if we can use email and so on.
Well, just to indicate that there were some questions pending from the Ministry of Tourism who were to appear today. They had asked for an extension, so certainly they would be required. And we have to determine whether or not it is absolutely necessary for the Ministry of National Security. And as usual, we would normally indicate who do we have next on the agenda? The Ministry of Transport and Mining were scheduled to be next on the agenda.
Okay, so those are
what I would say is we would put those on for the agenda for the next meeting. However, as I said, members would there be a back and forth. We can deal with that by email and authorize the clerk as to the final agenda and a final date.
Agree.
All right. So, members, I'm going to invite in a moment the Ministry of National Security in, but immediately we will allow them to the agencies and departments to go. Members, in front of you there are a number of a number of minutes. There's the minutes of the meeting of January 22nd. Yeah. All right, members, we have the confirmation of the minutes of January 22nd, 28, 29, which were the supplementary budget. The report has already gone to Parliament, but as a formality, I'd just like the members, the minutes were sent out. Are there any corrections? There are no amendments to the minutes. Could I ask someone to move for the confirmation? And seconded for all three. No matters arising. Permanent Secretary, good morning. Just before I start, let me apologize on behalf of the committee. We actually did not have a quorum. It takes 3 members for the quorum, so members just came. Having said that, so I apologize to you and all the staff for the late start. But having said that, today there are 2 issues that we were going to deal with. One is the review of the status report, which was a continuation, which are a number of departments and agencies were invited: Firearm Licensing, Department of Corrections, Parole Board, Institute of Forensic and Legal Medicine. And the second thing was just a few questions which you had given responses at the previous meeting. Given all that's happening, and we do understand that you would be involved in whatever response there is to the coronavirus, ministry would be involved, that we don't want to detain you, and I don't think anybody at this point, until we have more information, we don't necessarily want to have a number of meetings. So what the committee has agreed to is that we will not take the review of the report today and allow you to release the members, the representatives from those 4 departments that came. And the only thing we would do is briefly, if we may, just go through the responses to the questions, and then we would release you at that point. So we don't really want to detain anybody for any length of time today. So if you would like, we would allow you to release the members from the Firearm Licensing Authority, Department of Corrections, Parole Board, and the Institute of Forensic and Legal Medicine. Okay? You came just in time.
I think they're a bit disappointed.
From the smile on the faces, I don't know.
Particularly Mr. Darling.
Yes, I know. Absolutely.
George had
Okay.
he
The
chair of
chairman
the parole board, so I wish to
of the
thank him.
parole board.
Yes, the board.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. But as we said, and P.S., what we intend to do is, as soon as we have a better understanding, until we have a better understanding, we will schedule, if needs be, to come back.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so yes, let us go through the responses. Just briefly, these The first question here has to do, it says question 1, deficiencies of the existing legislation governing national security. And what we have here in the response is you have responded basically to say that there's a process that has to be followed. It is a lengthy process and has to go through all its stages. You then go on to say that there are a number of acts that you're working on now. You listed out the Criminal Justice Suppression of Criminal Organizations Act. You mentioned the Emergency Powers Act, the Emergency Powers Regulations, the Fingerprint Act, Constabulary Force Act, the Firearms Act, and the Bail Act. The question specifically that I'd asked on this had to do with the fact that my understanding was when the government had initially started the states of emergency, there had been a discussion that there is some disquiet about using your ultimate power, which is the state of emergency, sort of in a what can become a routine manner. So when you have a state of emergency and it goes on for a year and a half, you have gone everything, and the state of emergency also needs a 2/3 majority of both houses. It has a number of safeguards in it because of how it is written, and rightly so. And again, one of the concerns you have is you are with a state of emergency, you want to use it when you have an emergency. And if you already have it in place, it becomes, it doesn't have the power that it would have if you used it selectively. So there's a real issue. Like now, we are having a problem with Corona coming to Jamaica. In the United States, they're now having states of emergency in states and in areas because of it. Well, I mean, Jamaica, a large portion of Jamaica already has a state of emergency. If we had a hurricane, we'd already have a state of emergency. You have no other power to go above it. So, because of that disquiet, there was a discussion that was had. We had indicated why was it that we didn't use these zones of special operations more extensively, less state of emergency, so that you always had a fallback. And we were told that the zones of special, that the act that governed that, there were areas in it that did not allow you to do some of the things that a state of emergency wanted to do, and that it was not as effective. And in that discussion, my understanding, and which is what I want clarified, is that we were going to push ahead with something, an enhanced security measures act of some sort. What it would be is that act would be between the state of emergency and the zones of special operations. That would allow us to put in this enhanced security measures. Security forces could use it, but we would not basically be using a state of emergency, but we would have an effective crime tool nonetheless. And my understanding over the last 2 years that something should be going on. And when I look at this, I don't see that in this report that we've gotten. And that was a question I was asking. Is this, am I misunderstanding it? Was this not what we're doing? Are we going to just stay with a state of emergency, or were we working on something that would act as a bridge?
Yes, sir, Chair. You're talking about the Enhanced Security Measures Act that's being scoped out now, right? That's
Being what?
scoped out, basically discussed. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it is under discussion still. National Security Council is still reviewing this under the leadership of the Attorney General, and that's
But we'll be,
all I
but we'll
can say
be
at this
under a
time.
state of emergency for 2 years. You mean that we have not, it is not even at the stage of looking at something? In other words, it hasn't really started this process?
I am sure it has. As I said, it is under the
No, but
leadership of the Attorney General. So,
Yeah, but they
And-
could never have done this without the Ministry of National Security.
you know,
Well, yeah. So basically, you're saying that, well, certainly from the position of the Ministry of National Security, you are not at this point involved in drafting this legislation.
it is being discussed at the leadership under the leadership of the National Security Council,
you
which
know-
the Ministry of National Security.
Well,
The minister is a member of, as well as Member Jackson and all the other security persons.
Mr.
So,
Chairman,
you know,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
let me emphatically clarify what the PS said about my being a member of the National Security Council. I am invited to select meetings of the National Security Council. I do not participate in what the National Security Council develops, either decide on or develops. I am invited from time to time, and I'm advised of some of the things that are being done by the government.
Well, members, just on this issue alone, and I would say this to the Permanent Secretary, and I think my advice to the Parliament, the fact of the matter is that obviously this means that the intention is just to continue with a state of emergency in various areas as our crime fighting tool. In other words, the legislation that we had expected that would act as a bridge so that we did not have to use a state of emergency in this regard, but could act as something that we could get the effective tools out of what was in the state of emergency and put them in enhanced security measures as something that we could all agree on has not really progressed to the point that we wanted. I mean, the other acts here are all important, but certainly the one that is being used extensively is a state of emergency, and quite frankly, the fact that these Enhanced Security Measures Act are not moving well.
you asked me to list the deficiencies in the response and in the legislative agenda that we have. I didn't say it wasn't moving. Like all the other acts that are there, it's under consideration and we're being worked on.
Oh, I didn't see it in this.
It's here, yeah.
Which one is it?
Number 2, Emergency Powers Act.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, what I'm seeing here for the Emergency Powers Act is not the same. This one, there is an Emergency Powers Act. This one, you have simply said here that the Emergency Powers Act, you're changing the fines in the Act for the breaches of regulations and indicating that you want those raised. That's a totally different thing from what I'm talking about.
But the column that says status says several of the noted concerns are being addressed in the Enhanced Security Measures Act, which is being spearheaded by the Attorney General's chambers.
I think we need clarity because that's not, is this what we're talking about? This is the Emergency Powers Act. I'm talking about the enhanced security measures, something that would be between, a bridge between the state of emergency and the zones of special operation.
If I may, Chairman, what I'm understanding is that I do understand the point you're making, but what I think I understand the PS is saying is that the Enhanced Security Measures Act is being spearheaded by the Attorney General Chamber. But your point is very much so, that while the Attorney General's Chamber might be leading the development of the Act itself, the ingredients from a security management standpoint, crime control standpoint, the Ministry of National Security stroke the JCF would have to play an integral part in that exercise, because the construct of the legislation must be to support the objective or the agenda of the National Security Ministry. And in that regard, I would want to believe that the National Security Ministry ought to be in a position at all time to say where it is, what is being done, since it is being done to satisfy their mandate of crime control and crime management. So from that perspective, I think the ministry should be able to advise us.
And so it is, sir. You're right. And that is all I have to say. I know the various arms of the security sector have been consulted, like all of us. But as it says here, it is being spearheaded by the Attorney General's Chamber. So they are in direct leadership of the day-to-day contents and development and who they speak to. I am not spoken to all the time, every day on these matters, as you know.
Who represents the National Security Ministry in the development of it on behalf of the ministry? You have your lawyers in your chamber,
yeah.
And that person is not here today.
No. My legal acting senior is here, yes. But do we have other legal...
No, the person who participates, who represents the ministry in those deliberations, in terms of, one, what the provisions of the act will be, what is it that it's seeking to do, which is what we would want to get an appreciation of. Because, yes, I share with the chairman this suite of legislative matters that is outlined ought to be basically to enable the country to better manage the crime situation we face. After all we going around and all the different pieces of legislation, it must have one common goal, and that is to make Jamaica safer. And I'm taking it to mean that these things are needed in order for the country to achieve that goal. And since that is the mandate of the Ministry of National Security, it ought to be in a position to say what is it that the Attorney General's Chamber is doing on its behalf in seeking to fulfill that mandate.
All right, members, I don't think we are going, yes. The mic, please. Yeah. I think, try it, test it, just make sure, sir. No. Turn off that one beside it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to ask a question of the PS. Given the observation that was made by the chairman and Member Jackson with respect to the proposed act, and given your response, are you satisfied that with how that is progressing in terms of the the question that was raised by Member Jackson and the chairman. Are you satisfied with the communication and progress that is being made by the Attorney General Office?
Yes, Member. I know that the AG's offices has direct dialogue with the operational areas of the security sector. I know that they are in discussion with the CDS, the CP, and the legal arms of those areas, plus the ministry. So I'm very confident, and I wait for when the AG's office has come up with its, they're doing their research and doing their data gathering, and they are in discussion. So I have nothing more to add to this. So, I know what it takes to coordinate and pull things together, and all of us in the machinery are not at the table every day because we are pulled in so many different directions. But the critical persons who are a part of that dialogue are a part of that dialogue. Yes, I am.
Yeah, yes, I must tell you, I don't necessarily share your comfort, simply from the point of view that crime is arguably the most serious chronic problem that we're facing in this country. And we are recognizing, and on both sides of the aisle here, we have indicated that, there has to be some working together to make this first to fight crime. And quite frankly, one of the things that we have, and certainly I have repeatedly indicated, that I have a disquiet, I'm not comfortable with using a state of emergency in a perpetual way, just as a tool to fight crime. So you have a constitution in place, you have all these things, but then you just decide, okay, having done all that work over years to bring Jamaica to a point, and then you say, well, crime's out of control, so let's abrogate all of that. Let's get rid of all of it. And simply what we're dealing with is putting a state of emergency so that all those constitutional issues that we had fought for and put are just thrown out. But we did understand from the discussion from the minister and from the heads of the security forces that there were some loopholes in the existing legislation, the zones of special operations that we had worked on and sort of had an agreement, but there were loopholes as well as some of the others. So we said, fine, you'll get the support, but work on some enhanced security act that will give the powers that you need to effectively fight crime, and you'll get support for it, and yet we would not have to use a state of emergency. And my point is that over the last 2 years, in my mind, I thought we were working actively on it. No, my problem is that if after 2 years we don't have anything that's even partially definitive, it becomes a little concern that it looks like, yeah, let's just stay with a state of emergency. There's no real urgency to really deal with this. So I certainly do not share the comfort. And you said that it is in the hands of the Attorney General. Members, I think that if that is the case, then more extensive deliberations, and maybe we need to inquire of them whenever we get the opportunity. I think at the next meeting we should invite them to find out exactly where this is.
Mr. Chairman, I fully endorse those remarks you made, and I think it is appalling because the state of emergency is one piece of legislation, one constitutional provision that provides for the suspension of people's rights and civil liberties and gives that power, give total power to the security forces to use at their discretion. 1. 2. Under the state of emergency, as we have experienced, many persons' normal lives are disrupted. Normal, everyday citizens' life is disrupted. It is perhaps only the privileged in this society that is able to go about their normal lives undisturbed because of where they are. And you know that very much, Mr. Chairman, being a member of parliament in a constituency that is so affected. I am a member of parliament in areas that are so affected. And if what we are seeing before us is that if after 2 years, the ministry responsible for national security, and by extension the government in collaboration with the Attorney General Chambers, find it difficult, extremely strenuous to promulgate a piece of legislation that can seek to preserve those civil liberties, return normal everyday person's life to some normalcy. They cannot find enough time after 2 years to do those things while enabling the security forces to effectively carry out their duties of detaining persons who they believe from intelligence or evidence need to be detained over an extended period of time than what currently obtained in existing legislation. If after 2 years the Ministry of National Security and the government is telling the people of Jamaica that they are so busy, so caught up with other things, that they cannot develop this piece of legislation, it is saying that the state of emergency is their preferred means of fighting crime, regardless of what it does to people's normal life. They will abide by that as a means of fighting crime, and they are doing so in a situation where, in the very state of emergency areas, crimes, murders, and shootings are occurring virtually on a daily basis. It is not that it is terminating murders or shootings. They are occurring almost every day. When you look at the crime stats on a daily basis, more than half of them are committed in state of emergency areas. Mr. Chairman, it is an indictment on the ministry, it is an indictment on the government that they have failed to do this after such a long time. How much more time the government needs to restore the civil liberties of ordinary persons? I say so, I emphasize this point, Mr. Chairman, because I know, as a matter of fact, in my own constituency, in the Portmore area, many small micro businesses have been dislocated because of restricted opening hours. Many even larger businesses, like even the theater, wouldn't consider that a small business, but because of the restricted hours, their hours of operation has been curtailed to the point where they're intending to close these operations. And when that happens, Mr. Chairman, it is not only their freedom that is restricted, it's their own economic life and the survival of their families. These are people that are quietly crying, and they are not being heard. The ministry must recognize that this is not just a process to be completed, this is not just a set of things to be done, it is people's lives that are being affected on a daily basis, that it is suspended by the state of emergency. And the parliamentary team of both sides have agreed for cooperation on it, and it has not happened. Lastly, Mr. Chairman, when I look through the report and the legislative agenda, how many pieces of legislation that have been set out for the financial year 2019, 28, 2020 has been completed? One completed piece of legislation is the one that has an international requirement financial transaction. That is the only one on the agenda that has been completed this year. I hear that the MOCA bill regulations, which was one of them, will be tabled now. I've got seen the draft of it sent to me. It was not, I never see it tabled yesterday when the House sat. This is the last month in the legislative year. And this slew of legislation supposed to represent a genuine, sincere attempt on the part of the government to put a handle on crime and all those responsible for it. And we are taking over 1 year to even complete the paperwork. If we take so long to complete the deliberations and the paperwork, how long will it take us to catch the criminals out there who are murdering people and shooting people on a daily basis? This is why people are living in the depth of fear that they are living in this country, Mr. Chairman. This committee cannot take this matter lightly. It is about life and death, literally. It is about the level of comfort and safety of the ordinary persons. And in light of coronavirus, put those together. You're increasing the misery index of the Jamaican people.
All right. Okay.
I'd like to respond. I would like to respond.
Sure.
Members. The Ministry of National Security, as you know, because every time I come and sit here and report, we are doing and have done everything and continue to do everything possible in the time with all the investment commitments that have been made and the strategic task and the operational commitments. We continue. But as I said, and you know, the legislative process is a very long and tardy experience, and we have continued to do everything that we can do. And you all know that based on the reports that I have given when I have come in the last 3 years, every time that I sit here and talk, you know the level of work and input that is put in here. So there are some processes that are beyond my remit. And I'm saying to you, as I said, this is being led by the Attorney General's office. And in cases of extreme emergencies and national situations, it is not unusual for the Attorney General's office to lead on certain things. So I would like you to separate that from the work that the civil servants do in the Ministry of National Security and the collaboration that we have done to keep our first responders on the job. Yes, the tools of legislation that were put out this year have been the POCA, the MOCA, and firearms. And it has taken every man on deck to do all of that. So let us give credit to that as well. And every time, as I said, I have appeared before this committee several times in the last 3 years, and you can see in the records, we are working. We're not sitting idly down. It takes, 40 years to repair some things that have not been done. Is a new baseline, and it has taken us a whole new paradigm shift. And I started my discussion in 2016 when I came here that we are in transformation. It doesn't take 1 year to transform, to build capacity, and to change things. So you need to understand that too.
Mr. Chairman, I wish to respond. Two points I wish to make. Madam PS, I made a point in my comments. I said the ministry and the government, because I fully recognize that no one ministry by itself, when it comes to legislation, it resides exclusively in the ministry. But the ministry has a lead role. But indeed, if it does not get the kind of support that it needs, and I emphasize the government, because it is the government constitutes all arms, the Attorney General and all others. So it represents a failure of the government in its collectiveness to get the job done. And secondly, with all due respect, Madam Pierce, with your ministry and all the others, regardless of how much is being done, and I won't challenge, I know you work hard. I know the staff in the ministries work hard. But at the end of the day, the question must be asked, is how hard we are working satisfactory? And that's why I believe you said, Mr. Chairman, you were not comfortable, Because none of us, including the Ministry of National Security, can say that they are comfortable with where we are, the level of murders, the level of crime that is taking place. So yes, we're working hard, but we are not getting the result that we want. Because, Madam PS, you need other entities to draft legislation. How many, all of these pieces of legislation that include you and others remain incomplete? So it is not one ministry, it is the collective government that has failed to complete its own agenda, and to complete or even partially complete it in a satisfactory way so that people's lives can be spared and people can live in less fear. That is not an opinion of mine, Mr. Chairman. That's the living fact of all of us in this country. That more are being murdered, and the legislative agenda remains incomplete. That is to help to achieve making people safer. So let us deal with the reality of that, the fact of it, and most of all, the safety of the Jamaican people. That is my concern, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Yes. Again, I think that what we are here as a committee, we're just trying to evaluate the facts as they are. It's not a either way indictment or otherwise. What I would say to you is that while there are difficulties in bills and getting them through and the drafting, as we all know, I simply start from the point of view that there's or supposed to be a consensus on elements of fighting crime. There's a call nationally, not just within the political sphere, for some coming together in terms of fighting crime. And one of the things that has been a bugbearer is the use of a state of emergency as your primary crime fighting tool. My point was simply, at the start of this, as a way of appeasing it and working, was to get another tool that would not be a state of emergency, but would have all the elements necessary to effectively fight crime. And we thought that this was being pushed through as a matter of utmost priority. You have indicated that you're but a small part of it, and it is being driven by the Attorney General, and we will be questioning the Attorney General about it. But like us, I suspect you also would feel a little, or would want that something like this, which is something that we have understood from the Ministry of National Security and the security forces, that this is something that would work, that we would be moving with great speed to get it done. And that's the concern I have, that if after 2 years we don't have it, we're not saying it is the Ministry of National Security's fault, your fault. What we are saying is that as a parliamentary committee, something of this magnitude and this importance, we have to get to the root of why this delay is taking place. And I think it's something that even yourself, as the administrative head of the Ministry of National Security, would understand and would also enjoin themselves to ensure that this is done. All right, so members, sorry, the suggestion is that at the nearest possible date, we will write and ask the Attorney General for her responses based on our concerns, and we will, at the appropriate time, have a discussion with the Attorney General's office. I move to question 2, which has to do with the details of contracting, the catering contract to provide meals for members of the security forces. Again, there's a lot of stuff here. I don't know all the details. what interested me in the discussion here is the fact that when we had gone through it, we understood that a lot of this was done by direct catering. It was done almost as an emergency, but then continued as an emergency for an extended period of time. And thirdly, that even though there were complaints in certain quarters that the quality of, we were hearing about those issues. So we had asked for some questions on it. Your responses are here. Is there anything you'd like to, is there anything further that you would say on this? In other words, did you find anything of note, concern, things you'd have done differently? Have you made any changes to it? What's your take on it?
Well, I'll ask Mr. Simpson, who is the person who directly
deals with
works with the police.
Yes.
Because they have their own machinery. Remember that they have an accountable officer.
Absolutely.
So, but we have been providing a lot of support, corporate support to help. So Mr. Simpson can answer that.
All right.
So, Mr. Chairman and members, yes, we can confirm that there are, in fact, some issues with the quality of the meals in some quarters. All right. And in your preamble, you indicated that these services were contracted using direct and/or emergency procurement, which I think would be understandable in the circumstances. We don't know when a zone of special operation will be declared or a state of public emergency. All right, so for the most part, though, we found that they were in fact working well, but there were concerns in relation to some of the providers. We have since reached out to them, indicated our discomfort with some of what was occurring. And we have since seen improvement, at least in a reduction in the number of complaints that have come to us. However, we haven't stopped there. We had launched a procurement process, a national competitive bidding process to identify some concessionaires who we believe could serve us better. We are a little disappointed with how that process has gone, because we had about 2 or 3 entities that responded, but when we went to evaluation, those bids had to be declared unresponsive for one reason or the other. What we are now doing is a more targeted approach, where we are approaching established entities that are well known with a view to putting in place some kind of sustainable arrangements to serve these zones of special operations and states of public emergency. But for now, the immediate concerns that were the subject of, that were raised here, those issues have been largely addressed. But we are still pushing for a more sustainable solution.
And can I add further that as the parent ministry, we take this area very serious, right? So that is why we're giving corporate oversight, and that's why we have assigned that CTD from the ministry to work with the police force on this matter to ensure that the meals that the first responders are getting on the field are sufficient, nutritionally sufficient and well prepared. So we have a vested interest in ensuring that, and have taken control, basically, for want of a better word.
I don't know. On page 14 of the report, number 2. Let me go back up a little bit. Number 2, it says that one of the catering services were in Kingston, Denham Town, and public emergency in the amount. It says here $81 million. Is that right? But in brackets is 8.1. I'm not certain.
That's a typo. It's actually $8.1 million.
That's what I figured. I thought that was wrong. Now, why I say it's a problem, what they have done in some of these cases, they contracted them for a month as an emergency, and then afterwards went on in cases for a year or more without the proper processes in place. Now, sorry, go ahead.
You say without the proper processes in place to...
Procurement.
Yes, but Chairman, I would say that direct contracting is an established method of procurement in the guidelines and the law. So I wouldn't say that it's not a proper process.
Well, let me understand. When you say that, my understanding was that in terms of emergency, you would use direct procurement, but that would carry for the first month or a couple months. But that once you understood that you're over a period of time, over a year, year and a half, that you would then go through a competitive tender to allow for competitive bids. Or is it you're just saying that because my understanding is even at ministries, if they're doing a launch, often they have to call 2 or 3 persons just to have it written down. I don't know if I'm wrong, but you're saying that you can just pick somebody and pay for it.
In the circumstances, remember that there are guidelines in the procurement law that speaks to urgent circumstances, unforeseen circumstances, and for continuation in some cases. You know that, as you would have indicated in your preamble, there is no way that the ministry could have known exactly when a ZOSO would have been declared or a state of public emergency. Once that happens, we have to mobilize to at least provide some support to the men and women who are on the front lines. All right, so nothing is wrong with using a direct contracting or emergency procurement methodology in the circumstances. It's justifiable.
And just to support, I think, given the fact that a state of emergency is called every 3 months, it expires. So it's a bit difficult for you to go into a contract to say, we need you to provide the service for a year or so. It might just be 30 days, it might just be 90 days, it might just be 28 days.
And that's precisely the issues that we have to consider. Thank you.
I understand that, but it so goes against. Ms. Morrison from Ministry of Finance, just a matter of interest, 'cause I'm not quite certain. You have here that there was a period, 200 breakfasts, 100 lunches, 200 suppers, that was $15 million. The meals were provided to the officers on a daily basis from October 17th, 2017 to December 16th, 2017. So that's October, November, December, 2 months, $15 million. Upon the expiration of the contract, same was expended for the period January to March. Is this a normal, what is the philosophy behind the Ministry of Finance? How does it guide the procurement in cases like this?
Yes, Chairman. Based on what I understand in terms of procurement rules, the direct contracting is a tool that the permanent secretary is able to use in certain circumstances. What I am aware of is that there are instances where you would have perhaps have a relationship with a particular vendor, contractor, and it might cause unforeseen interruptions. if you try to go outside of that particular contract. So in terms of the direct contracting, it is something that the procurement rules do allow, and it allows the permanent secretary or the financial secretary in my instance to give approval for direct contracting without having to go on the market each time that you need to get something going. So direct contracting is actually in the procurement rules, and it is okay. It is quite okay for a permanent secretary or financial secretary, the accountable officer, the accounting officer, to go that route. So direct contracting is fine.
Okay. So you're continuing that process now, or you have changed it?
All right. So, Chairman, right now we have no choice but to continue with it until we find alternate suppliers, given some of the concerns, some of the issues and concerns that have arisen. I indicated to you, though, that we met upon difficulties in that process.
In trying to do the procurement.
In trying to do that. And that's perhaps very intuitive that if we had gone that route, even though it's not needed in the circumstances, some of the challenges that we could have had. So it's a little bit nuanced. It's not as it would appear to the onlooker.
All right. The one other thing that I would say on this, though, just you always see in movies, as I don't have any personal experience, but you always hear that army food and all them things not so wonderful, and you always hear these things. But you have a case here where we are actually paying market rates for food. So one of the things that we should put in place for our members of the security forces is a mechanism of feedback as to the quality of what they're getting, because it's not like them getting it, it's something that the government, the people of Jamaica, are paying for and paying market rates. So have we put in place something that at least says, do a little questionnaire every month or so, what you think of the quality, the quantity, time, is it hot, whatever it is, just so that there is, within the context of what we have, that you don't just treat it as something in the historical perspective of somebody in camp or training or care rations or these things, but something that you're actually paying for, and people have to deliver something of a certain quality. So
we're doing just that, sir. I want to say that from where I sit, because we do strategic leadership, that is my role, I see. So we're seeking for greater efficiencies, and we stay in contact, and we are getting feedback, and that is why I've insisted that we review the contracting process and the quality of the suppliers and go to be much more targeted, and to try to get a comparable situation where all our first responders meals that are provided to them have the same nutritional look. So that's what we're working towards now. At good value, we get what we're paying for.
All right. So you're saying you put some of that in place.
We were working on that, and at some point, I know trust is not a thing that parliamentarians have of public servants.
Yeah,
but in this instance, no, allow me, because you have seen me now several times for the entire 3 years, and you can assess me in my leadership. We are proactive, and we are constantly out there at a strategic way. And every time I sit here, as I say, I share with you what we're doing. So we're on to the next step. I'm in touch with the Federation, and they show me the level of meals, and we go back and look at what we're paying the suppliers for the meal, and we are about changing that. It's that. Huh?
I think.
Yeah, we have engaged a nutritionist, as Mr. Simpson, to look at the quality.
I think an easy way around this, though, is maybe once a week or so. Maybe you should just send for to the lunches.
No, I get pictures on my WhatsApp.
No.
Right, and I can't see.
No. Please, I am
well,
saying.
Well, just look and tell me.
I think twice a month, myself and Mr. Simpson should have one of the lunches. And then you could basically, you'd speak from experience.
Definitely, sir.
All
I
right,
take note.
thank you. All right, before I go on to question number 3, I don't know if there are any other, just before we do that, let me just, I think we're being joined with by students from Charlemont High School. Would like on your behalf to welcome them to Parliament. Welcome.
You said Charlemont.
Uh-huh.
That's in the parish of St. Catherine, Chairman.
Okay.
That great parish
Close
of St.
enough.
Catherine.
Close enough.
I just want the record to note that they are from the great parish of St. Catherine.
All right. Welcome. Welcome. All right. I wanted to move to number 3, but yes, go ahead.
You were in full flight on the meal item, but I wanted from the previous item, really, the legislative agenda, and the PS had indicated what will be done. What is peculiar, Mr. Chairman, is that the report sets out the pieces of legislation and what they're seeking to achieve. It would be good if we get some projected timeline for they being tabled or at least submitted to cabinet for approval. The process is that once the draft is finished, it goes to cabinet before it is tabled here. When it will get to that stage, why I ask Mr. Chairman, we need to have a sense of pace of completion of these things. Because the truth be told, when these things are tabled, the country will get a sense that these things are being addressed. But you know the whole Jamaican saying, grass are grow but ass are starve. The legislation is being done, but the problem is prevailing because the legislation is not there to help support the curtailment of crime. So if they, in the response, I don't want the answer now, you know.
Yeah.
If in the response to come.
And to be fair, in their response, they did note that in this regard, it's important to note that it's not possible to estimate with any degree of certainty the time period required for the conclusion of any bill, as same is dependent on how long it will take at each stage of the legislative process.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Because you know I'm on the ball. I'm on the ball.
Yeah, because PS is experienced enough to know that.
No, but having
PS,
said
we
that,
want to help you.
Yeah, but I just want to say that I think the point being made here, I mean, and not to belabor it, is that, you know, with the importance of crime, one would think that at the forefront of all these things, that these things would be churning them out. You know, if you need some additional judges or some staff, you put them on, you pay for them, you do it, because this is the critical issue, and we certainly have some concerns, and that the speed with which we would have liked to have seen it done. We're not seeing it, but let's not go back. That's a
little addendum to assist my friend across.
A short one.
Is that when I ask for the timeline, is that she can then go to them and say, I have given the Parliament this assurance that this will be done and you must do your part to deliver on it. So it don't cause her to
it does.
live
Let
to look
me
bad.
ask a question. Yes, in this case, you work with the Attorney General, there's a back and forth. You made the point that the enhanced measures are being led by the Attorney General. Would you say that is so for the other parts of legislation as well, or the other pieces, or is it just for that one? In other words, if we were asking a timeline, is it something we would ask of Attorney General's office, or is it something that we would ask in some cases of you and some Attorney General?
In this case, for the enhanced security, that is really the Attorney General. In the other pieces that we have direct spearheaded by us, we have several stakeholders, and I've asked for timelines. I continue to ask for timelines.
Well, one of the advantages, you know, I take, remember Jackson's point.
Yeah.
You know, we do understand that there are difficulties, but if we do put some timelines on it, at least it holds us to some idea, a measurement of what's happening. So it's not that, but it is important for us because, quite frankly, you turn around 3, 4, 5 year pass, you know.
I note, and in fact, in response to the legislative agenda, we have brought in surge capacity in the ministry to beef up, to strengthen our capacity to be able to at least scope out and pull the stuff together. So I consider that the ministry has been very responsive, but there are more than one stakeholders as you know, in this legislative arena. So,
All right.
thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move to. All right, I move to question number 3, the cost of the state of emergencies with respect to the Jamaica Defense Force. The only thing that I found interesting is that the state of emergencies in financial year 2018 and 19 were 110 million and 29 million, a total of 139 million, whereas this zone of special operations for 2017-18 was 480 million. That sounds excessive. That's $500,000 in a year. I'd never heard that figure. You sure it's not a typo?
I can review, sir. I work with the figures were given to me and advised by the financial sections of the.
All right, you could check it first and break it down.
Yeah,
and break it down.
Yeah.
That's $480 million in a year. That's you know, that's $500 million. That's a whole lot of money. All right, so you'll check that first. All right, let's move to where we have a breakdown of the fuel costs for the special operations as opposed to the SOE. The point is made here that they're not able to disaggregate the different costs, and therefore we're only able to work with the costs that were provided previously to the committee. Question number 5, the total number of vehicles for the security purposes, and we had indicated just over the years the number of vehicles per year. Bottom line is 1,000 vehicles has been provided over the last 5 years, roughly. The question is, just for, and what would be an interesting issue for us would be the idea, the level of attrition. You see, the problem with police vehicles, I mean, every day you hear of a police vehicle turnover, this or that. So the question is, does a police vehicle last a year, 2 years? In other words, it would be helpful for us, if it is possible, to get an idea of how many operational vehicles we have at a point in time. Let's say that now, let's say you have 5,000 operational vehicles. I'm just plucking a number out of the air. What would it take to remain static? Because you know you're going to lose 1,000 a year or 2,000 a year. Does a vehicle last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? If there's some idea so that we have an idea of how many vehicles we need to be able to be increasing or decreasing, what sort of numbers? Or if there's something you work with on that. And now you have here the procurement process. Now, this was an issue that was actually in the news some time ago. The procurement process utilized for the obtaining of additional vehicles for JCF. My understanding from reading in the media was that a number of persons came out because private sector, persons in the industry, they were saying that what had happened is that the vehicles were to be divided between different companies, and yet one company, but in different branches or one ownership, ended up with all the vehicles. So, well, clarify for me if I'm correct or not correct, but it indicated here receive letters from bidders KIG, Toyota, Jamaica, and ATL Automotive expressing concern that Stewart's Automotive Group was awarded contracts to provide both lots of vehicles when the bidding document restricted each company to a bid on a single lot. That is what appeared in the media. And you have here the response to the bidders. So maybe you could clarify that for us.
Okay, Chair, I'm going to ask Mr. Simpson, who was fundamental to this process, to elaborate further, but I want to express that we took great pains this year. We constantly are working for improving our performance, and we really went to cross all the T's, dot all the I's kind of expression on our procurement. So he will elaborate further what the ministry has done, breached no procurement area as far as we are concerned when we review the process over. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members, maybe for the benefit of the committee and the viewing public, we should just go through the full process.
Absolutely.
All right, so on May 28, 2019, potential bidders were invited to submit tenders by way of national competitive bidding procurement methodology with respect to the procurement of motor vehicles for the JCF. The procurement opportunity was advertised in the two widely circulated newspapers. All right, and also on the MNS website, as well as the Public Procurement Commission's platform.
Right.
Just want to make that clear. June 3 and 6, 8 companies.
And this is in 2019, June 3 and 6, 2019.
2019, yes, Chairman. 8 companies responded to the invitation to tender and were issued tender documents. I want you to take note of that. 8 companies.
Exactly, companies.
8 companies. These are institutions that are duly registered, separate tax compliance certificates, and all of that. June 6, correspondence was received from the Office of the Integrity Commission informing the ministry that they will be monitoring the execution of this procurement opportunity and requested documentation, including tender document, details of the comparative estimate, among other things.
Just for the question, is that a normal thing?
It is.
So whenever you're doing it, you get this letter?
Yes, so once you...
So you did not think that this was due to any concern they may have had or otherwise? This was just a normal... Okay, good.
Once you put an advertisement in the newspaper,
they then indicate that
write to the permanent secretary.
That Big Brother is watching you.
Yes.
All right, go ahead. Yes.
So
June the 7th.
I'm happy that you have noted that as well. June 7th, following consultations with the JCF, an addendum was issued to all bidders advising that amendments were made to the technical specifications in the tender documents. The amendment was done to facilitate the inclusion of anti-lock braking system and to adjust the CC rating from 2,800 to 3,000.
500 to 3,000.
Which is also normal. To be able to do, Yes, so nothing precludes us, the procuring entity, from adjusting the technical specifications, as long as it is circulated to all.
Let me just say this to you, though. Let me just say this to you. There's some issues when we were dealing with the used cars. We came up into these problems because once you start changing it, you always get some complaint somewhere down the line. And I can't believe that it is beyond us if we are going to be buying vehicles to not know beforehand the allowable specifications for those vehicles, for us to have to be changing from 2,800 to 3,000 to change it. I mean, 2.5 to 3. I'm just saying.
I would say, it is normal, right? Following market soundings, etc., to adjust your technical specifications, as long as each prospective bidder has the same information at the same time. It is not an issue.
It has been an issue in the past. That's the
Well,
point. You
not
forget
in this
what
particular
was it?
case.
Some mechanism was put in, and then the date was changed. I'm just saying in the used car. Then the other manufacturers said they
do the
didn't get.
transmission specifications that were not clear. But in this case, the JCF revised, went through again and to make it more and tweak the specifications to make it more.
No. I'm simply saying that. But go ahead. Go ahead. Let's not make a mountain out of. Yeah. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I hear Mr. Simpson made the point about all the bidders being informed. But in the normal course of the bidding process, Mr. Simpson, an ad goes out for some vehicles to be supplied with certain specs and so forth. Based on what you provide, a prospective bidder would assess to make the decision to enter in the first instance based upon those specs. If the specs are way beyond what they contemplate,
so if you
they don't
change
invest
the specs
time or money on it.
after.
Well, if you look carefully, member, whatever adjustments would have been made there would not really exclude anyone.
No, that's not the
my
point.
point.
The point that's been made is that the initial ad gives certain things, after which you get 8 persons interested. You then determine later, after you say consultation, that you're going to widen it to 2.5. There might have been a man with vehicles at 2.5 who didn't go in the initial phase because it wasn't part of it. So he's now excluded, which is what happened with the used motor vehicles. And I'm saying to you that, just looking on, I would have thought initially, if I were putting out, 2.8, look like you're looking for something special. I don't see a lot of vehicles, 2.8 to 3. I would have thought it would be 2.5. But I'm just saying, it is one of those things that just seem to be untidy. You get these things, so you have ended up with a CC rating 2.8 to 3. Quite frankly, it doesn't seem like there should be a problem moving it to 2.5 to 3. But quite frankly, you may find a man out there that when him here, it's really 2.5. He said, but that's not, I would have bid it if I had known.
Yes, so you buy
You're leaving yourself with loopholes.
Sir, very simple. I imagine that these things are like, just a simple question here. Specs for a vehicle and for efficiency is like new technology, right? Which is constantly changing. So I don't think it's out of the remit of the police force to say, look, this would be a better situation at this point in time, but certainly in a few, you learn of something that will make it even more efficient. Because we're going for efficiencies. I don't see how.
No,
I'm just being,
No, that's not the point at all.
No, that's the point.
The point is this. When you have a motor vehicle, most people that you're seeing with motor vehicles is 2000 cc, 2.5, 3, etc. Whatever it is, you have put out a tender from the ministry or from the JCF saying that you're going to buy motor vehicles of a specific.
But the range was widened so more people could bid. Isn't that what the specs did?
I'm making the point. We indicated a letter had gone out. What went into the letter that went out in the Gleaner and the Observer?
In the long run, the range was widened for more people to bid, to take part.
That.
No. On that point, Chairman, my question follow-up to the letter that you spoke of, or speaking of, you said widen it, but it applies to those who have applied already.
At that point, no one would have submitted bids.
No one would have submitted bid.
No.
So the letter now, is it a reopening?
No, it's not a reopening. It is to indicate to companies who responded to the invitation to tender to say that we are.
Mr. Simpson, let me ask a question.
Yeah.
Do you
CC rating
understand? Let me try and be clear. Do you understand what our concern is?
I understand, Chairman.
Well, explain it to me. Just let me know. Let me hear. What do you think our concern is.
Your concern is that if the specs are substantially changed, it could affect some possible suppliers or bidders.
No, that's not the problem, Mr. Simpson.
All right.
Mr. Simpson, the problem is this. If you say to me that you want to supply apples for a fruit market and 10 man bid, the newspaper and Gleaner said apples, 10 man bid, and then when you had your sounding, you determine you want apples and oranges, and those 10 that bidded apply because they want to widen.
Mr. Chairman.
Please, just let me finish. There may be a man out there who had oranges before, but because it wasn't in this newspaper article, he's not going to bid. And I'm simply making the point that once you change the scope, you may very well persons who may have wanted to be part of the tender may not have done it because they didn't have a vehicle over 2.5.
May I respond? All right, so I understand the point you're making, but by that time, the procuring entity would have had a good idea as to the dealers out there who would be interested in supplying the vehicles to the JCF, and we were satisfied that we had significant interest. So the goals of the procurement would not have been hindered in any way. And I would still also like to point out that the change in this case, broadened the spec that would allow, even some of those entities that bought the bidding document, who maybe they were otherwise, unable to bid, could now bid because maybe they have vehicles in their inventory that matches those specs.
Yeah, but they wouldn't know because they didn't bid. Because they didn't know that if I have a 2,500 cc vehicle.
No, you're saying bid, no bid. I want to make that abundantly clear to this committee and our viewers. That at this point, we're not talking about any bids being submitted.
That's before the bids were submitted?
Yes, long before the bids were submitted.
Yeah, all we're saying is that in a case like that, where you have changed the scope, the prudent thing to do would have been to put it back into the public.
And to that I will say
information.
And to that I will say that we're guided by the various oversight bodies, all right, and specifically in this case the Integrity Commission. They were aware of all of this, and if they had directed that we go along that line, we would have. However, in the circumstances to where we need the vehicles,
we'll make our suggestions after. But continue. So now you change the specs. So on June the 17th, the ministry responded to the Integrity Commission's request of June the 6th. That's when they said they were providing oversight.
That's correct.
All right. On June the 18th. There was a pre-bid meeting which was conducted with prospective bidders to address and discuss all queries relating to the retrofitting / fit-for-purpose motor vehicles. And then on June the 21st, following further consultations with the JCF, Addendum 2 was issued in order to extend the delivery period from 180 days to 220 days in an effort to ensure that the suppliers had adequate time to acquire and retrofit the vehicles. All right. So we now move to June the 28th. The Integrity Commission responded to the Ministry's letter of June the 17th, expressing concern about the Ministry's response in relation to the comparative estimate and the absence of precise quantities. All
right, so initially, Chairman and members, what we wanted to do was to approach procurement from a unit cost perspective.
About
A unit cost perspective.
Unit
so
cost,
whoever submitted the lowest cost for a SUV, we would, provided that everything is in order, we would award the contract, and the same for the pickups.
Okay.
However, the Integrity Commission wasn't on board with that idea.
Why?
So What they wanted us to do is...
So all the cars must come from one place?
No, that's not what it is about.
Okay.
That's not what that was about. They wanted us to develop an in-house estimate for the total number of vehicles that we intend to procure with the funds that we have, instead of doing it the way that we were thinking. We wanted to go on a least cost basis per unit, and then after that we will determine how many units we are able to procure. So let's say that you have $100 million, and for argument's sake, we get a unit cost of $2 million for one, then we will determine how many units we can procure.
Okay.
They didn't want it like that.
In other words, the SUV may turn out to be the same cost of the car. You'd prefer to go with more SUVs.
Precisely.
Members, we have heard of these issues on a number of occasions. There's a point at which I think the Integrity Commission, is there a difference here between there's a National Contracts Commission and the Integrity Commission? Are they right? And they're subsumed. Yeah. So it is really. No. It's really. Is this coming from like the Contractor General element of it?
No, I think the Integrity Commission in this case, my understanding is that. All right, if you look at the PPC is where once you complete your internal evaluation process and your procurement committee recommends the award and the head of the procuring entity signs off, then it goes to the Public Procurement Commission to look at all who submitted bids, etc. The Integrity Commission is about ensuring that the process was followed.
All right, let me just say this, members, and I don't want to cut it, but I would suggest, really, in a case like this, could you just give us a little idea of what the issue was here, what you were trying to achieve? Give us a 2-paragraph on what you were trying to achieve. That was the Integrity Commission had a problem with.
Sure.
What we would do is to ask the Integrity Commission, because we need to find out what the rules are that allow for this, because it seems to me to be quite reasonable what you're asking for in that occasion. Certainly, if me personally have a farm or have something and need to buy 3 vehicles, the first thing I'm going to do is find out what the cost of each vehicle is before maybe I determine what. I may need 2 pickup and 1 car, 2 car and 1 pickup, but it's going to depend on the cost. Right. And often what is happening is that the rules governing these things don't allow us to do the reasonable thing. So we need to evaluate those 2 because we're in charge of looking at efficiencies of government. So we'll question that. But let us move on now. So you had said that is the Ministry's response in relation to the comparative estimates and the absence of precise quantities.
So, yes.
So on June the 5th, 2019,
yes,
the Ministry responded to the Commission's concerns by providing a comparative estimates and quantities for both lot of vehicles.
Right.
The Ministry also sought the permission to continue. On July the 11th, the Commission responded via letter dated July the 11th, expressing no objection to the continuation of the process through the issuance of Addendum 3 and the extension of deadline for bid submission. So you did not pursue what you were intending to do.
Right. Based on the feedback from the Integrity Commission, we
just went with a bulk.
Right. And we developed a comparative estimate to reflect the value of both lots and then proceeded from there.
All right. So on July the 18th, you got the new deadline. On August the 7th, 2019, 8 bids were received and 1 was immediately disqualified. That is Cars and Commercial Limited, because they did not obtain, well, that's not the bid document from the procuring entity in accordance with the bidding instructions. Okay. So in August the 29th was the first sitting of the evaluation committee. At that point, based on the evaluation proceedings, correspondence was sent to Stewart's Auto Sales, Toyota Jamaica Limited, and Silver Star Motors, Limited, asking for confirmation on the features of the retrofitted items, detailing cost and technical specifications for Lot 1. All three bidders responded during the period of August 29th and 30th. You then had the second sitting on September the 2nd, and on September the 3rd, Magna Motors Limited was asked to provide clarity on the siren lights as per specification. A response was received on September the 3rd. So during the period September through November, this went through the entire, it went to the evaluation committee, it went to the procurement committee. It was, you got the endorsement on September the 30th of the head of the procuring entity.
Yes.
That's the permanent secretary.
That's correct.
On November the 4th, it was endorsed by the Public Procurement Committee. On November the 19th, it was endorsed by Cabinet. On the same November the 19th, Motors for 271 million, and for Stewart's Auto Sales. On November the 25th, Toyota, Mag. They received letters from New Car Dealers Association of Jamaica expressing concern that Stewart's Automotive Group was awarded contracts for both lots of vehicles when the bidding document restricted each company to bid on a single lot. On December the 5th, in response to responses to bidders, the association was further advised that the bidders that had similar concerns ought to express same in writing. Okay, so you, in other words, you got the letter from the association, you indicated that each of these, that's only bidders that had a concern that you'll be responding to.
Correct, Chairman.
Okay, on December the 4th, a request was made to the head of entity. To the head of entity?
That's the permanent
secretary. They keep changing your nomenclature. To authorize the payment of the 50% deposit to the successful bidders. This was approved, and payment of 50% deposit on December the 6th, 2020. So you had responded to the concerns. You had indicated that you got the letter on November the 28th and responded to them that you'd only deal with the % deposit, and December the 5th, same day, contracts were signed with both Silver Star and Stewart's. On December the 12th, the deposit, 50% of the contract was paid to both contractors. On December the 13th and 14th, you received letters from the bidders, KIG, Toyota, and ATL, expressing concern that Stewart's Automotive Group was awarded contracts to provide both lots of vehicles when the bidding document restricted each company to bid on a single lot. And on December the 16th, you responded to the bidders that is ATL Automotive, KIG, Toyota, and you advised that the Stewart's Automotive Sales and Silver Star Motors Limited were separate legal entities, as they were able to demonstrate that they have separate certificates of incorporation, tax compliance certificates, and public procurement registration certificates. Essentially, both companies satisfy the eligibility criteria as stipulated in the bidding document. Further, both Stewart's Automotive Sales and Silver Star Motors submitted the required manufacturer's authorization to be dealers of the brand and model vehicles for which they submitted bids. On January the 14th, you received a letter from the Integrity Commission requesting further information with respect to tender in light of the publication in the Jamaica Observer. And on the 27th, it says here, the ministry responded to the commission and provided the requested information. Is that requested information what we have here, or was there more?
I think there would have been more. I can't remember the specifics now, but it would have included documents as well.
The vehicles in both of these,
Yes.
Stuart's and Silverstar, it's the same makeup, it's different.
64.
The same hand.
Remember, we're not seeing it as such.
No,
And-
but no, fine. You may not.
Right.
That's why I asked the question in the first instance. What was the intent of establishing a policy or a requirement that not one company or more than one company apply for both lots? Because in the instant case, I've been following this in the media. The claim being made by the Auto Dealers Association is that the two companies, their substantive ownership is the same, though they have two formal separate registration, and therefore your intent is not being served. And if I know, for example, look, let's be frank and fair. If I know this is the rule and I want to circumvent it, I will comply it in form, but not in substance. So therefore the intent behind the policy becomes paramount. And if I set out to be honest and say I am the person applying to both, and then I see an appearance of one entity changing the form, but the substance remain the same, then I will feel cheated. One company I understand, or you have in Jamaica, one company might operate or represent more than one brands. One brand meaning make, Rolls Royce, some other Lamborghini. I use ones which I know don't exist in Jamaica. But, That's what the issue is, Mr. Simpson, is the appearance, right? That some people trying to be straight and forward. I'm applying for both. You don't give me, but you give one who is substantially the same owner, but two separate registration.
So,
Member, we did not receive a bid from Stewart's Automotive Group. We didn't. All right, so, and then I also want to point out.
Technically, you are correct.
Member, I also want to point out.
But functionally, you are not.
That our bidding document, the bidding document stated clearly that suppliers are allowed to bid on only one lot. Now, we can discuss who is a supplier. For us, a supplier was a duly registered, incorporated company. That's, for us, who constitutes a supplier.
so just
Mr.
as a
Chairman,
matter of
and I will
interest,
belabor it. I think the point is made. And I'm going to end where I started. What is your intent? And something must not only be fair, but it must appear to be fair to all concerned. As it is, personally speaking, in form it might be, in functionality it's not. Our role as parliamentarians is to make sure that the systems of government not only appear to be fair, but they are functionally fair.
If I may, Chairman, I would just close by saying, though, that since the Integrity Commission requested further information regarding this very issue, I am of the view that it is under review from that authority. We haven't heard from them yet. So,
and you have not heard from, no other letters have come from the bidders?
Well, we have a letter from an attorney requesting the minutes of the meeting, the pre-bid meeting that we had.
When did you get that letter?
That was about a few weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago perhaps.
But I thought you'd have put that in.
No. At the time when that came, sorry. This was already in drain.
Yeah, but that's an important point. So
yes.
It may be that you got a letter from one of from the lawyers of one of the bidders. So obviously they are still not comfortable. Some of them. That would be the perception.
That would be correct.
And you have not heard back from Integrity Commission?
Not at all.
All right. As I said, these are issues that obviously are going to unfold. Remember, I don't know that we can go much further, but as I said, the point that is being made is simple, that you had indicated something in the bid document. You are trying to achieve something. And obviously to a number of persons, what you are trying to achieve wasn't achieved, which is the bone of a contention.
Well, just a follow-up to one and a separate question, Mr. Simpson. Those minutes requested, because I'm all about transparency. I have an approach that once you deal with government, nothing is secret. Right? The minutes requested, have they been made available to the relevant parties?
They will be made available, I would say, within the coming week, latest.
Within the coming week,
latest, yes.
Next week.
The what?
The minutes from, I think the minutes deal with the procedures which were raised and discussed in that meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That they want some, it's really about transparency in terms of the changes made. A question I want to ask. Sure.
Your mics don't work in here, sir.
Yes, we know. We know. You know, welcome. Welcome.
Can I
to the
add
Parliament.
that we are really, we stay within the law and we have worked the process within the law. This is what we have done. So maybe we need to look at the law. I don't know if there's an issue.
Yes.
So we do all that we can to comply within that process.
No, yes.
Checks and balances.
What you have done is laid out a process.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that this is something that's in the public domain.
Yeah.
The extent to which it progresses from here. You do have an integrity commission in place,
Yes.
and there are legal processes, and both of them seem to be in train. So I don't necessarily feel that we here can go much further with this, because
No, I know,
think the
but I just
stories-
wanted to
I think
raise
the story is still
what
unfolding.
the ministry
Yes, we
seeks
understand.
to do all at all times.
Yes, we understand
Okay.
that position. Now,
One last question regarding that matter. That bidding exercise for those motor vehicles, how much again was it? I think it was 60 and 40 or something.
64 L200 pickups
Uh-huh.
and
40 something,
43
43.
L2
Makes for
Outlanders.
107 units. That is to be supplied within the 2019-2020 fiscal year.
We expect to receive the 43 Outlanders are here, currently being retrofitted.
Okay. And the
Alright.
64,
And I was assured this morning that the L200s will arrive by sometime in the next 2 weeks.
so within this, which is within the fiscal year, that you'll have the 107. The person so contracted in this instance, that is the extent of the contractual obligation, or is it? That's one. Question two. Is it that if you need subsequent amounts, say in this fiscal year to start in the next couple of weeks, right? Which additional motor vehicles, because in the estimates of expenditure, there are additional vehicles to be acquired. Is it a fresh tendering process, or the same bidders you are extending these purchases to?
Member, that's a question that speaks to procurement strategy. Those discussions are still ongoing, and we couldn't speak definitively to that at this stage.
Mr. Chairman, the pertinence, relevance, timeliness of that question, I gather, and I stand to be corrected, that the amounts to be supplied may be or can be extended based on that tendering process. That is to say, if another 200 units is to be acquired, it is those successful bidders that would be now called upon to extend those amounts, right? Whether by the exact prices that were applied in the 107, 64 and 43, or through some negotiated adjustment, which usually for inflation or exchange rate changes or things like that. So I hear and not when say it's a convoluted response you give me a while ago, Mr. Sifty, about the strategy. Wait, what was the phrase you used a while ago? Procurement strategy. I simply want to know, yes or no, if additional purchases would be based on this tender or a fresh tendering process.
But remember, we can't answer that right now, because every year, just as the fiscal year is finishing and we are moving into the next year, we review our procurement strategy and look for efficiencies for the next year.
All right.
So that is where we are at. That
but
is
what
it.
I want to say, in light of the discussions that preceded now.
So don't say it's a convoluted answer. He give you the right answer.
No, because I couldn't understand it too well. Maybe
I am telling you.
Maybe it's my mind not so
No, I'm
sharp.
telling you, that is how business operates. You're a businessman, you know that. You review your strategy for the oncoming situation, whether you're going to deal with a different situation. You can't expect him to answer that right now.
Why I say convoluted, PS, is simply this. If whether or not, simply straight, if whether or not the purchase is made for the 107 units will be by virtue, the new additional ones will be from the suppliers or the successful bidders in these, or the process is going to be new. That's simply straight. Nothing to do with any review process or
so
anything.
he answered you quite appropriately. We have to go to the table, we have to look at our situation, review our process, and say, what is the best way to go forward? He alone can't answer that here. I am answering for you.
You are answering?
Yes.
And you know, because at the end of your answer, I don't know whether or not. All I know is that a process is going to be reviewed, as you said, And I wanted to know, because I am saying, and I was about to say, Chairman, in light of the questions that we just went, long discussion we had with Mr. Simpson regarding this process, it would be unfortunate if any additional purchases becomes an extension of those existing successful bidders. Simply because one thing, PS, I want to, one of my goals is to ensure that anybody who feel not fairly treated in a process, and you said it right, the NCC and others who's in the picture, the thing have to be reviewed, yes. Because at least now we do know there is the feeling or sense that the process is not fair. Any further opportunity for more purchases should not impinge upon the result of the last process. That is simply what I'm trying to achieve. Simple.
Right, well, let us, Mr. Simpson. No, please. No, I'm just. I think. Hold on. The members asked a valid, clear question. Mr. Simpson.
That is noted. You know, the comment from the member is noted. We also have to balance that, you know, in terms of the requirement for mobility for law enforcement. All right, so I am just saying that all those concerns are noted, but we also have to look at the need, the urgent need for mobility, which has been, Chairman, the subject of several discussions in this committee.
But look, I don't think, and I'm sitting here, I'm just trying to understand. I think, and get me wrong, my understanding is when you're purchasing vehicles, you go through a process to purchase the vehicles, this procurement process.
That is correct.
What Member Jackson just said, which I didn't know that could be done, is that having gone through this, if say you wanted to buy another 50 vehicles, correct me if I'm wrong, if you would be able to do it on the basis of what you've just gone through and go directly to purchase those vehicles. That's what I'm trying to understand. You're able to do that?
The procurement law allows for that. But what I understood from the members, you wanted a direct comment from us as to how we are going to approach the procurement for 2021, which obviously we can't speak about at this time.
Fine. But just clarify for me, having gone through this procurement of how much millions, if in 2021 you wanted to buy another 100 motor vehicles, you wouldn't have to go through a procurement process. Is that what you're saying?
We've never done that. We always review.
All right. When you say procurement process,
go ahead.
Because if you do a follow-on procurement, it still requires a process. If you do national competitive bidding, it still requires a process.
Would that follow-on of this new one, would that follow-on mean that you could simply choose the winner of this one and just purchase? Is there any amount or is there some? What are your limitations going forward?
The procurement laws, Chairman, allows for that, subject to the approval by the various authorities.
So you're saying that... The
question of whether or not the ministry is approaching it that way, we have not so determined.
Oh, you haven't determined that?
No, we haven't.
Okay.
We still have to go back to the drawing board and review, and that's what I'm trying to say.
And I think that what the member is saying is based on all the issues that have come to pass. You know, again.
We note all of that, but my point is that no decision is made in the way without going to the drawing board to review, to look, and then to decide.
Yes,
and that's the point I'm trying to make very clear.
Yes,
you know, in the planning process.
Yes.
We don't just buy and then say we're going to get more.
You know, PS, we always, but I'm just saying to PS that I would hope, you know, under normal circumstances, we shouldn't have this situation. I don't know any other ministry, but we have had two issues. We've had the used car. Now we have this. We're just trying for your own good to try and ensure that we try our best to protect you. And so I think you're taking this in the wrong light. I'm just saying, look at the reality, because PS, no, PS, because quite frankly, we wouldn't, we shouldn't have been here on either occasion. And I'm just saying that there are these concerns in procurement. We really want to get to the point where we at least get one series where you don't have any queries at all. You understand where we're going? All right, good. Last point, because I not. Yes. Now, let me just move to the last one. And let me just say this now. This last question here has to do with Jamaica and the CCTV cameras. And we have a lot of information here, the number of cameras in the different areas, Mepe, Mandeville, Ochorius, Negril, Bobe, etc. How many were installed, etc. Look. Let me tell you my difficulty, PS. And this is something that I am really quite upset about, this camera, the CCTV. And I take it from a personal point of view as a member of parliament and one of the areas that I'm involved in, Negril. Cameras were put into Negril years ago. About a year and a half, 2 years ago, we have had issues, and the Chamber of Commerce went and visited. There were tours. When we looked, a number of the cameras were not working. Some new cameras went in, some work done, but then we recognized at that point that there was no monitoring. So it was sometime, I think, late last year that finally persons were hired and brought in to monitor these cameras. Now, I had a meeting with members of the community, members of the GHA and Chamber of Commerce maybe a week or two ago. And this was one of the issues that came up again, and it was interesting because I knew you were coming today, but it's a question because there are just a number of questions. What is the contact between those people who are monitoring it and the actual police? Where are these cameras positioned? Because quite frankly, you have cameras that are supposed to be in places where we have had murders, and yet you're not hearing anything. It's not clearing up anything. We're having real issues. And there's a feeling that this is not working in the way that it's supposed to be working. I go further. Just in talking to members of the security forces there, they're saying they're cameras, but they really would like, in some strategic areas, just some cameras that were able to move so they could monitor those areas. A lot of the crimes that are committed, there's one way in, one way out. Cameras are there. These things are done on bikes. But we're just not getting the information we want. And the last point that was made is there proper recording made of these tapes that you can use as well? So the effectiveness of it just does not seem to be working in the way it should. And so we're paying for persons to man it. They themselves probably don't even know they're sitting in a room just looking at cameras. You don't know what they're looking at, what's the contact being made. To be honest with you, and the Chamber of Commerce made a point that they had a number of meetings, and from years ago, this point was made. They were willing, if there was a compatibility of cameras, to put cameras. They would purchase cameras and put on properties and tie them in, but it just doesn't seem to be happening. So this use of technology to fight crime, This is really going forward, where we don't have all the police you want or all the vehicles you want. Certainly technology is a way. I don't know, are you comfortable that this is working in the way it's supposed to work? No, well, and your answer might be different though. No, well, you're on the wrong side of the aisle. Yes, please.
Chair, I would want to suggest that we take all the comments that you have and set up probably in-camera time where we can do a presentation to you and other members about it and get down to some specifics that you want to answer. But we are rolling it out, and it is working. And while it is working, it's almost, well, I don't want to say it like this, but while it is working, we are also tweaking the system and building out the system, so I prefer if we do a presentation. And
yeah. I by all means we will set that up.
No, I really do want to do it.
But please take these comments I make are not. These are comments. What happens to me as a member of parliament is that when I have a meeting with the stakeholders,
right,
and that is a wide meeting, including persons from security forces and otherwise, there is great concern about the efficiency and the use. Now, I say that with the limitation that my meetings have been in one area. So maybe that's where the breakdown is. But when I talk to others, there is this widespread concern in a general sense. And I'm just saying this has such tremendous opportunities to break the back of this thing, and we're just not.
And it is happening, and I really welcome the comments because we want to make it an efficient tool. So that's why I'm suggesting that we can do presentations.
We'll ask the clerk set up our meeting as soon as you deal with the more current problem we have ahead of us.
That is why you see me so agitated today, because I really want
absolutely.
to,
So we will deal with that, and then what I would suggest is you bring the technical persons.
Yes.
And the extent to which we can have, I think that the information goes out, it will give people ease. I will readily indicate that there are things you don't want people to know where you have cameras, how they're being monitored, what. All of that is true. But the real problem you have is that people being murdered in the center of town, people sending you WhatsApp pictures of it, yet you can't get the official thing. Really, it's kind of becoming a little more the norm rather than the exception. And we just want to ensure that there is a functioning system in place. That's what we want. We're all on the same page.
Yeah.
We want security, and it is your duty to ensure that. And then the follow-up of that would be for me to carry you to meet with the stakeholders who are saying, look, we are willing to invest in this system to help you. And yet they don't feel that they're asking and reaching out, and nobody seems to be responding. So let's see if we can come together and work together on this.
I'm hearing you, and I'm connecting with you, and I'm with you. Because we're doing quite a bit of work in Westmoreland now. More at the community level, at the school level. So we want to meet the stakeholders. And I just want to note also that a lot of right now, the feeds from the cameras are helping high profile investigations on the police side. So that's why, talking openly about, as you said, where they are, but presentations are definitely on. And as soon as Ms. Bailey can set it up for in here, Mr. Arville Grant, we are ready, as you know.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I will do that in camera, members.
Thank you.
All right. So, members, I don't know if there's anything else, or we can We had hoped for a much shorter sitting today, but it went longer than we anticipated. So let me thank the Ministry of National Security. I notice you are walking with your hand sanitizer, so the public can see you. And I notice, Mr. Sims, you're leaning over the other side like you want a mask.
But on that note, though, Mr. Chairman.
Before we go there are just a couple points that I just want to. I'm coming to member. There is an issue, Member Jackson, members all. Yesterday in Parliament, the Minister of Finance and Public Service made the announcements on a number of things that are happening. One of them has to do with the farm work program. The farm roads program. Now, the farm road program has come to us. There have been a number of roads that have been done over the last few years, 2 years in specific. And there have been two bones of contention with it that I think need clarity. The first has to do with the qualification of the roads. My understanding is that initially they were looking at only farm roads, then some parochial roads, but we as a committee had made a recommendation to Parliament, which would have been sent to Cabinet, about the roads that would be within it, because there are a lot of roads that are incredibly important to farmers, which you want to ensure they're in that. That they qualify for it, and we just wanted to know what they were using as the bar for it. So I think it's important for us to have that meeting. And secondly, the process of selection of the farm roads. There was a long discussion in here, and I asked the clerk to pull the minutes of the discussion and the recommendation. And the discussion, what we're being advised is that the parish administration would make some selections in accordance, in consultation with the members of Parliament, and that those recommendations would be sent forward. There'd be a selection process after, people may select many more roads than are possible. But I think it is important for us to just review both what is being selected prior to selection, and secondly, the qualifications, so that you do not have a problem where if the specific instruction is that it's a farm road, not a parochial road, but yet a parochial road is important. We make the rules that are sent. The Parliament makes the rules as to what these qualifications are. If the qualifications are not correct, it is our job to change them and to make sure that the right ones are in place, because technical officers have to work within the remit of what they are given. And I think that it is unfair for us not to be very clear in what the intent is. And then when that intent is not followed exactly, then we are the same ones who are going to, rake public officials over the coals because it's not correct. So in that case, I think it is important for us to, at the next meeting, with regard to that, have that discussion. And so if members agree to that, we would ask the clerk. As given what we have said, we don't know when next we will have a meeting, but I think members, and I see both members here are ones who are very clear case, farming communities in their constituencies, and I think we can all agree on that. And what I would like is that the method of selection, what is selected, so that we ourselves are clear on what it is, and then we can move forward from there, rather than just a list churning out and all of a sudden everybody's jumping up and quarreling. And let's try and do the things in a very specific way. So if members, if we are united, if we are in agreement, can we agree to have them at the next meeting? All in favor? Yeah. Member Jackson, you was there?
I wanted to say quite importantly, as PS was indicating about the sanitizing of our hands. In light of the confirmation yesterday of the case in Jamaica, it generates a great deal of anxiety. We saw in the reports panic buying and all of that throughout the country. In this situation, the security forces are placed in a very peculiar position. One, their own security, protection rather, in this instance, and also they're interacting with the public. Because when you have restriction on gathering and so forth, is the enforcement element of it. And it's our security personnel who we are going to call upon to ensure that the restrictions are adhered to. And two things: one, the protection for them, and two, for them to be mindful of the anxiety and the panic in people in terms of how they respond to the circumstance. I don't recall in my lifetime really, something like this. People who have mosquito-threatened disease, but people say you kill the mosquito there, but people are just fearful of everywhere you go, what you touch, who touch you, and all of that. So I know it's a very unusual situation for us all, and therefore we have to make sure that we are properly prepared, preparation meaning appropriate gears and so on.
Member Jackson, I want to go a step further. I made the point yesterday in Parliament. This is not for national security, by the way. I made the point yesterday in Parliament to the Honorable Prime Minister, and it's I have a difficulty because I think this is something that we all need to work together on, and there's no sense of we don't want to create any sense of panic over anything, but at the same time, everybody wants to ensure that they can take the necessary precautions as they see fit. And one of the difficulties I have, and I think that I would ask the clerk, with the committee's permission, I would ask the clerk to get in touch with the Ministry of Health quickly as possible, because I do know that yesterday there was a group that was trying to get some face masks and hand sanitizers for some schools that they're associated with. I had asked them to get some for me because I thought it may be good to carry to the constituency, because while we couldn't do it on a broad scale, the fact of the matter is you have persons who are very vulnerable. We know that the elderly, persons over 65, 70, who have pre-existing conditions are persons we have to look out to. So getting hand sanitizers around them, and even some masks, if not for them, those that are dealing with them, just for the period of time, is a good precaution. And yet, yesterday, in the two places I went, they could not find face masks. And there was a difficulty getting some hand sanitizer, although I think they found a few. But it would be my understanding that the Ministry of Health, based on the responses, has gotten some supplies. Now, the response we got was that they had gotten supplies, but I'm not certain if those supplies were supplies strictly for the medical, for the nurses, the doctors, for the patients, for the actual hospital, and the health ministry environment, or if they were also, as a matter of precaution, knowing that this was coming for some time, if purchases were made for face masks and hand sanitizers so that these can be distributed, or at worst retail, so that persons who wanted to take these precautions, that there is this. Because if there's a shortage, there must be somewhere where people can go for the vulnerable persons. And that information is important. And I think the committee, we need to ask the Ministry of Health to indicate to us where it is that one can get these supplies, how do you get them, and whether they have in fact built up enough stocks that will allow us to proceed. Because this is not a matter of whether it's going to come or not. That's not the point that we're making. I think the point is that the precautions you take for it not to come or spread is probably more important than anything else. So we just want to ensure that the conditions to prevent it are all in place. And as it stands now, I've been asked questions, and certainly in the case that I would like to assist where I can with the vulnerable, I'm having difficulty in sourcing it. And I think the Ministry of Health must give us some ideas as to how we can go about those, and I'm sure those must be in place somewhere. So we would formally ask if they could give us that information. I'm certain we can get it, tomorrow or the Monday, because it should be in place by now, and I'm sure they make it public and send it out to the members, and we can deal with it appropriately.
Mr. PS, Director of the PS, I made that observation against a conversation I had recently with a police officer who manages traffic. And I didn't see him in a particular area for a while. And he told me that he moves around to different track situations, but he became ill because whenever the road work is going on, he has to manage the traffic in those situations with a lot of dust. They are not supplied with dust masks. And I thought to myself that it should be routine that any police officer is put in a static place to manage traffic when you have construction going on. Things like dust mask, which is critical to the health of the person, the officer, must be just like uniform. The station is supplied with dust masks, because then he has the illness to deal with, time from work, family distress. It multiplies. Now, this is a bigger issue. So it's that small, isolated or limited instances now in multiples. So it's urgent.
Can I just say, sir, I accept and thank you for your comments on that one. And I know that under normal circumstances, the Commissioner has been pushing the welfare component of the force. And more recently, I've been discussing a comprehensive wellness program for first responders. And Mr. Simpson and myself are working on it along with members of the force. But this has now added another layer. And of course, I had the discussion yesterday with the Federation head, Mr. Patrick Rowe, and I know the Commissioner has been talking with them. So we are, and that is why I came to chair this morning and said, I want to get out of here because I have things to go and do. Okay. But thank you very much for your comment on that, sir.
All right. So on that note, members, I want to thank the Ministry of National Security, thank the staff of both the Ministry of Finance and the Parliament. And members, as we indicated, we have a number of ministries and agencies to come whenever we have the next meeting, but we will adjourn for a date to be determined. We had intended to meet next week, but we'll adjourn for a date to be determined based on as things unfold. So thank you, members.
just for the committee's protection, and the minutes will record that the committee made the decision regarding how we will reconvene after the break, or the suspension of meeting, as you suggest.
Yes.
Least someone come up with a novel idea that we have to have a meeting to make the decision.
No. Absolutely. All right, members, thank you. This meeting is now adjourned.